Ready? All right. I'd like to call to order a special meeting of the Natchitoches Planning and Zoning Commission. Tonight we have a special meeting to consider the application of Roanoke Development. We'll get into that in just a second. I would ask everyone that has a cell phone to put it on silent or turn it off at this time. What we normally do in these matters is we hear from the applicant, and then we hear from anybody in support of the application. Then we hear from the folks opposed to the application and let them talk about it. Everybody has to come up to the podium or the AMBO, identify themselves. If you're going to be there a little while, or try to move around, Steve has a little clip-on mic for you. And then after we hear all the opponents to the application, we will then hear from the applicant or his designee, and to address only the things brought up in opposition to the application. And then we move on to the discussion by commission members. If for any time after we close the public comment period, the commissioners have any questions, either for the applicant or an opponent, we'll bring them up to address a question by any commission members, and then we'll give a single designee of the other side a chance to respond if necessary. I would tell you all that we're not going to put up with any cross-talking tonight. What's going to happen is that somebody's going to talk to us from the podium, and we're going to talk to them, and we're not going to have talking from the audience to the person up there, no matter who it is and which way. Just hold your thought, and we'll get to whatever question you have. The time to have talked amongst the pros and the cons and the pros was before I bang the gavel. It's not time tonight to discuss that. It's about a public hearing to inform the commissioners tonight so they can make an informed decision. Did I miss any comments that we normally do, Ms. Rock?
No, sir.
All right, Roman numeral 2, roll call, Ms. Oaks.
Jamie Flanagan. Bobby Claiborne.
Here.
Ethel Blake.
Here.
Charles Whitehead III.
Here.
Ron Brown.
Here.
Isaac Lewis.
Here.
Anita Du Bois.
Here.
Ricky McAllister. Michael Lewis.
By my count, that's a quorum, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, the recordings for all city meeting videos are now posted to the city website. You can watch these afterwards, and then the user can subscribe to the city's YouTube channel at City of Natchitoches, LA, or visit the city's website link at www.natchitochesla.gov/content/meetings-videos. Steve, do we have a number for somebody to call into tonight if we set up for that? Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, we still have an open meeting. I just wanted to make sure that was it. Subsection 3, old business. Since this is a special call meeting, we have no old business to discuss at this time. It's not appropriate. Roman numeral 4, new business. Subsection A, the application by Roanoke Development, LLC to subdivide the following: proposed Glendale subdivision of 12.436 acres located in sections 36, 37, 38, and 39, Township 9 North, Range 7 West on the north side of St. Maurice Lane to develop the Glendale subdivision, which is single-family residential subdivision, 37 lots. It's on St. Maurice Lane. It does not have a 911 address yet. Exhibit number 3 in the commissioner's packet, which is probably the only exhibit in our packet, and councilperson district number 1. If the applicant or his designee would come up right now, and I'm going to get a summary from the director of the application herein.
As you know, Mr. Roanoke is here from Mississippi. He is presenting to us a development of a 37-lot subdivision. Just to remind the commission that our job here for planning is to look at what's being presented and compare it to our subdivision ordinance. That's the only thing that we're required to do for tonight, is to compare and review.
Have the city departments reviewed this, Ms.
Yes,
Rock?
we have. We've met with the city departments, utility, public works, even our drainage engineer and so forth. Everything that has been presented is in compliance with the subdivision development regulations for the city of Natchitoches.
All right. All right, and before we go on to the application, I just want everybody, want to restate what Ms. Rock just said. We're here about subdivision regulations, which are Appendix A of our city municipal code, not Appendix B, which is the zoning laws, which has to do with the property and how it's zoned. Ms. Rock, this property is zoned R1, is that
Correct.
correct? And just to pre-termit any discussions, you've researched the city's records, and you do not find School Drive is not a public street as indicated in our planning and zoning regulations, is that correct?
Right. School Drive is not a dedicated street. It's only a passageway, and that's it.
Thank you, sir. You have the floor.
Thank you.
You have the lapel. This is Mr. Rowan and Mr. David.
These
Well, no, he's the speaker, so you want to give him the lapel, right?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Is it on?
Can you turn the speakers up?
Just give him 1 second, 1 second.
Is this the clicker or the speaker?
That's the speaker.
Okay, can you hear me now? Great. My name is David Strange with Roanoke Development. We're a real estate holding company based out of Jackson, Mississippi. In addition to commercial and other residential developments within our portfolio, one of the other things that we do is develop single-family subdivisions in what we call smaller to mid-cap markets, which would be towns and cities with a population above 10,000 but below 100,000. We do not like to compete against publicly traded companies like Adams Homes, D.H. Horton, Homes, Track Home Builders, things like that. That's not the space that we're in. We tend to cater to a little bit of smaller markets. What we have proposed here in Natchitoches is Glendale subdivision. If I could go to the second.
Let's go to the next slide. Do you want to have the clicker?
Great. Which is going to be 36 single-family homes. They're all going to be LEED certified, which is an energy certification that you get from the architect of record. You get that designation by using all Energy Star components, whether that be the type of windows you put in, the type of appliances you put in, the type of insulation that you're using, so that in the end you've met all the criteria of the LEED standard to be an Energy Star designated home. That's a pretty significant investment on our part to make these homes energy efficient on the back end. All of these developments have curb and gutter with underground utilities. There's sidewalks, there's subsurface drainage, there's street lighting. All of the subdivisions have restrictive covenants in them that control things from the architectural styles to community policies, rules, and regulations. They're all completely fenced. There's a limited access gate on the front of the subdivision to preclude an overabundance of traffic getting into our subdivision for the benefit of our residents. This is the location of the development, generally speaking, there on St. Maurice. That's a much larger tract of land that you see there that's undeveloped. We are purchasing about 12 acres of that undeveloped parcel that is located behind the school ball field and accessed off of St. Maurice there. Okay, the next one, let's see. Okay, this is our plat that we have proposed for the subdivision. It may be a little difficult for you guys to see, but there are a couple of things worth noting on that. That the lots that, as they're designed, they're 8,400 square feet. The local ordinance only requires a lot size of 7,200 square feet. So all the lots that we're building are larger than required by the R1 zoning. but yet they're still manageable. You know, we find that in our markets that particularly with younger people, that they want more common spaces, less yards to mow, but everyone still wants a yard, just not 2-3 acre yards like you know, used to be a little bit more popular. And that holds true with the energy efficiency homes as well. That's a really big point for us. The other thing that is really a little bit harder to see on that is at the north end of the property is where the parish ditch for the drainage for that area is. And we have carved out about another acre of the development that is a part of a detention system. And so we've had our, you can go to the next, go one more, I think I covered that. Yeah, let's see. Okay, so what we did is before we set upon proposing our draft of our subdivision plat is we met with the city officials to familiar ourselves with all the requirements of the ordinance and all the requirements of the individual departments that will scrutinize our construction plans and our final plat. And we met with representatives from the city water department, the sewer department, the electrical department. They looked at all of our plans. We also provided pretty detailed engineering calculations with how much water was currently coming onto the property. And one of the things that we're charged with under the local ordinance, which is common in most jurisdictions under modern development ordinances, is that the calculations need to demonstrate that when we're finished building the subdivision and the houses, that we're discharging no more water than is currently being discharged off of that site, which is currently in agriculture. And in fact, our calculations show that because of our detention system, we're going to have less discharge than is currently being discharged from the agriculture into the ditch that runs there in the back. And again, it's all subsurface drainage that ties into that. We've also shared our plans with the parish and the levee board and everyone that has any jurisdiction with respect to the drainage in that area. And everyone has looked at and agreed that our calculations were done in accordance with proper engineering standards and meet all of the requirements. At some point in time, we'll have to submit our plans to the Department of Health and the Department of Environmental Quality before we get any building permits, who likewise will have an opportunity to comment on anything that we're proposing, and obviously any suggestions that their engineers make that we would incorporate into that design to tie into municipal water and sewer systems. We're not requesting any variances. All of our lots meet the requirements. All of our public infrastructure is done to the current city specifications. We're putting in the required detention areas for the stormwater. Go to the next. One of the things that is required under your local subdivision ordinance is the requirement to have restrictive covenants and neighborhood covenants with respect to the maintenance of any common areas, and in particular the maintenance to detention ponds. And one thing that's let me see if it's on the next, excuse me, well, anyway, I'm sorry. So one of the things to bear in mind is the distinction between a detention pond and a retention pond. And the way that this has been engineered is as a detention pond, which is more akin to a shallow swell that's grass, that's mowable, that acts as a large collection area so that as the water runs off of the lawns, it has an opportunity to collect a little bit in this area before it's being discharged. And as soon as the rain event subsides, that detention area, like a yard, goes back to mowable, maintainable grass. We're not retaining any water on site. That's in keeping with the current ordinance requirements and, again, in best practices in most municipalities that we do developments in. That was something that historically was not required in lots of development codes. Again, you ride down and can see in many towns and cities where there's open ditch drainage, there's no retention areas, there's nothing of that area. There wasn't a lot of kind of comprehensive thought into drainage patterns and things of that nature with respect to entire sections of a city. One of the things that from our investigation into choosing this particular locale for a development is that the largest population group as a percent is ages 29 to 34, which is 13% of the population here from the last census data. That's kind of prime age for folks entering the workforce and needing workforce housing. Most people of that age are looking for energy efficient, maintainable homes. There's a lot of, since the pandemic, the ability to work remotely. Whether you're an insurance adjuster or something like that, you no longer have to go work at the corporate office in Shreveport, let's say. You can live in this community and do your work from home. And so that's a very important thing when we look at places to go build developments is kind of the age demographics and stuff. This is going to be a catalyst for future economic growth as you have a workforce that stays within a community, and this obviously is a college town, and so one of the things that would be important is to retain the talent that's being educated there and not have everybody that graduates just move away and take jobs elsewhere. And so one of the ways to help retain some of those folks is to provide a nice place for them to live and raise a family. I was surprised that I looked at the last census data, and since the 2010 census, there's been a 5% decrease in the population of Natchitoches. So there's a lot of population being lost, and one of the things that if you would poll people, they'll say is a lack of decent, affordable housing within the market. Go to the next, let's see. And these are samples of the houses that we build in these developments. They're approximately 1,500 heated and cooled square footage with 2-car garages. And we have 7 or 8 kind of prototypes that we typically build. That way we're able to get cost savings by knowing what our product is and doing a repetitive type thing with obviously a lot of curb appeal. Go to the next. I think these are that's another one, and next. I think I just have 4 or 5. Next. And that's just a typical interior of one of the houses. They're again all very energy efficient, easy to maintain, kind of have an updated color scheme. Go ahead, and I think that's about it. As far as timeline, we would seek to get approval of our plat and then take the steps to do our construction drawings and have a permittable plat so that all of the final engineering is done with respect to the devil's in the detail of the sizing of the pipes and things of that nature, so that again that will all be presented back to all the city departments to comment on and make sure that everything is going to go like it's supposed to. And at that point, we will make a determination on when we would want to go in the process of starting some vertical construction. I mean, I think anybody knows that right now in the last 120 days, let's say, there's been a 25% increase in construction costs just in 120 days. In lumber alone, it peaked at 600% over what it was this time last year. A sheet of OSB down at Home Depot was $10, it's $65 now. And so we're very mindful of, we're just at a unique place in time right now that we're going to watch the market just a little bit, and that will dictate whether we start in the fall or the spring. The lumber futures are coming back down. We certainly expect that market to resemble some form of normalcy here in the not too distant future so that we can get started. Lastly is obviously, as far as the economic impact of a development like this in the community is, we're not trucking all this stuff in. So I would say that if your average cost on one of these houses is $225,000, we've got 36 lots. That's roughly a $10 million construction project, so that would be, $10 million of locally sourced materials that are bought. Obviously, it's cheaper to buy lumber, shingle, sheetrock, things like that here in the local community than try to bring it in from somewhere else. We are a general contracting firm, but we subcontract the vast majority of our work. So again, there'll be opportunities here for the local HVAC guy, roofing company, brick masons, painters, things of that nature to have an opportunity to work with us. We would expect, as I say, to start this either in the fall or early spring, and get it wrapped up, probably a build out, something like this with our lots and all. It would take, 12 to 24 months maybe before you would see the subdivision being brought to its fruition with families living there and things of that nature. I think that's generally speaking, our presentation, so to speak. Again, we met with the city officials way before we started any of this process, and identified what we thought was an appropriate piece of land that was currently zoned appropriately, and have engaged a local engineer as well as consulting engineers to do a lot of legwork that went into what looked like a relatively simple subdivision plat, but there's a lot more in that thing than maybe jumps out on that screen, from lightings to sidewalks to drainage calculations and things of that nature.
Questions for the applicant? No. Questions by members of the commission for the applicant?
Mr. Whitehead,
Yes, sir.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Sir, you said that calculations have been done regarding water drainage, and you indicated that no more than, maybe even less than, the amount of water that's coming off the property now would be coming off of the development. You have a lot of square footage of concrete. You have a lot of square footage of roofing, all of course hard material. You're using what is, I consider modern architecture, very steep roofs. So it's one thing to say that you're not putting more water off of the property, but you're going to be putting that property off of the property at a much faster rate than it currently is because you have so much hard surface.
That's also one of the requirements is, for that calculation is you can't increase the velocity of discharge either. So that's all been taken into account in the engineering.
It's in your calculations.
Yes.
You
Yes.
just
Yes, sir.
failed to mention that. Okay.
I'm sorry. Yes.
One thing that you did not address is the impact on the traffic in an area that is already highly congested. You have a school right there next door to you. You have children who walk home from that school. I am very concerned about the safety aspect of having this development.
I guess my only comment to that would be we would be subject to local law enforcement as everyone else to enforce the speed limit on that road. We don't have anything to do with that.
You build it and it's somebody else's problem.
No, that's not what I said, sir.
Any more questions, Mr. Brown?
That's all.
Any questions by any other commission members of this gentleman?
I'd like to say I agree with Mr. Brown about the traffic situation. One of the biggest problems that I've seen on St. Maurice over the time that I've been here in Natchitoches is that on certain days you can't get down that road, especially on trash day. And on a normal day, two regular-sized Ford pickup trucks going in the opposite direction can't travel at in the same space. A development of that size adding that amount of traffic to a street that's already overbarred. If the city isn't going to do anything before anything is a shovel or anything is lifted to address that problem, then what's your concerns?
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Well, my concern is that there's a road that can't handle the traffic that's there on a normal day without a development there of that size. And until something can be done in order to increase the width of the road that's already there, St. Maurice Lane, or the drainage on St. Maurice Lane, then adding a subdivision, even if it meets all the zoning requirements right now, will still have a drastic effect on the people that's already in that area.
Well, I guess if the question is, and I clearly don't purport to be a traffic engineer or a municipal planner, but it just stands to reason that in order to increase a tax base in a municipality necessary to make improvements, you have to have a property that's taxable to put funds into the city budget to do any municipal improvements that the city would deem necessary. You typically don't see large, highways run through areas and towns where there's no development there for that road to support. So it's a little bit of a chicken and egg situation, I would say. But again, I'm not an expert in that field.
Mr. Boyce, you have anything?
I would just want to add, there are actually 3 schools in that area, and it does get quite congested in the mornings and in the afternoons. We have car lines. It's really a mess. And we have kids walking. They have to walk within a 1-mile zone at our public schools at East and Weaver, so they're walking up and down the streets, and it is a traffic problem already there in that area.
Mr. Lewis?
And my concern too is the way that we going in here. We only got one way in and one way back out.
Yes, sir. We met with the fire chief with respect to that, and that's typical of every municipality is that when you are of a certain length of a roadway, you're only required, even by the state fire marshal, to have one means of ingress and egress. That's common in all the towns that we build these developments in. There's a turnaround provided for the fire truck in there, and it's a safety issue, frankly, for our residents. We would prefer there to be one way in and one way out so that our residents feel safe and secure, and there's not a lot of traffic.
Does that take care of you, Mr. Lewis? Is that, you have any comments or questions?
Well, and my problem too is you're going in right over there by the schools, with all these kids and I have worked for the fire department and the ambulance service, and if you get a call or something back there, 9 out of 10, you're not really thinking about the kids or whatever. You just thinking about getting to the fire or whatever, So that's a big concern of mine right there too. It's the safety of the kids.
Yes, sir. I have no expertise in that area.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Ms. Blake, do you have anything to add?
Well, just to add what everyone is saying, my concern is the kids, it's the traffic. And I, myself, I've been in that area before, and the traffic is not good. Matter of fact, my kids have attended schools there, and that is where my concern comes in.
Thank you, Ms. Blake. I just have some very minutiae questions for you. Is this thing going to have sidewalks in it?
Yes.
Okay. I just didn't see a place for them on the plat. These homes, when will they be for sale?
We have not determined a starting point.
Now, I'm talking about, say the CO is issued, are they for sale immediately or will they be held?
We haven't determined that yet.
All right. You said that you thought the cost would be $225 per house roughly?
That is correct.
What's the standard division of labor and material in the construction of a house? Because surely it's not all the 225 is.
Oh, no.
Is-
That would be allocating probably somewhere around $60,000, $55,000 for the lots. We have to obviously acquire the land and
Yes.
put in all the infrastructure.
So the taxable, I guess my question is that the taxable impact on the, just the material sales, if you've got $100,000 in materials in this deal, is only $3.7 million in taxable sales. Am I
From a
correct?
sales tax standpoint, that sounds about right.
Okay. And let's see. That's all right. I appreciate the comment, Ms. Roy. Most people tell me to tone it down. Most people don't tell me to tone it up. My comment is that approximately $100,000 of materials would be in this. So with 37 lots per unit. So with 37 lots, assuming, that you break out, that the peaks and the valleys even out between some houses in the community center. If you've got 100,000 material per lot, that would give you $3.7 million in tax revenue. And I just wanted to clarify, it may be $10 million in sales or $8 million in sales, but it would only be roughly something under $4 million in tax revenue. I mean, taxable sales that the city would reap revenue from, the city, parish, and state. Ms. Rock, these calculations that were done were not only in compliance with the subdivision regulations, but within our stormwater
Ordinance.
ordinance.
It was completed.
28.1-212, those were taken into account.
They were.
Okay.
The city's engineer, Mr. Nick Verrett, actually provided the calculations or approved the calculations.
Okay. I believe that's all the questions I had. Like I said, it was very minutia we had. Is there anyone else to speak on behalf of the application of Roanoke Development for Glendale subdivision?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
will you entertain questions from the audience for this gentleman? Or is that inappropriate?
I think it would be inappropriate at this time, Mr. McCain, but we'll come back and visit it. As I said in my opening, is if questions come up, and I would say that the appropriate way to handle that is for the individuals, when they come up here, to state their questions, and then we'll get the gentleman to do it on his rebuttal. I think that'd be more appropriate, and it would flow a little better than that. And plus, it would give everybody, not give everybody 5 minutes right now to think of your questions. Everybody can think of their questions as they come up, and I'll write them down as well as Ms. Oakes can as well. Thank you, Mr. McCain, for that point of order. Anyone to speak on behalf of the application of Roanoke? Thank you, sir. We'll call you back. Keep the notes, because we're gonna, you're only gonna address in your rebuttal, as I'm sure you're aware as a lawyer, we're not gonna rehash all this stuff. We're gonna only have you address the con points. Thank you, sir. One of the things I don't believe I said, and if I repeat myself, I apologize. We're going to hear from a couple of folks first in the con application, and that are going to be somewhat lengthy or detailed. We'll entertain anybody that wants to come up and identify themselves after these two individuals talk and tell us that they agree with them or they disagree with the ones, but we're not going to hear the same comments over and over again. If you want to say, like we're going to have Mr. McCain and Mr. Boyd come first and second, and if you want to say, I agree with McCain's points on traffic and Boyd's comment, I assume his will be public safety. I may be wrong, knowing the former fire chief, I assume, but we're not going to talk about the same thing over and over again, because my bedtime's about 9 o'clock. All right. With that, I'll have Mr. McCain come on up, and that's just because he's indicated that he had been tapped by several folks to come forward, and I just as soon go ahead and get him. He's well in public speaking.
Ready for me?
Yes, sir. Well in public speaking, and be sure to identify yourself and tell us where you live and tell us, and probably you give him that little lavalier mic if you don't mind, Steve. He'll be there talking. Oh, he's got it. Okay.
Do I get the little thing clipped on my shirt? All right, can you hear me? I've been having difficulty hearing everybody that's talked, so I'm gonna talk loud. Mr. Chairman and Planning and Zoning Commission, we appreciate the opportunity to be here and to make our case in front of you. We appreciate that. Pardon me? Yeah. Can I? Can I remove it when I
Welcome
talk?
to.
That'd be great. Good. Okay. I'll make this comment. As of this afternoon, prior to coming here, we had 426 petitions filed against this project. I think that's a sizable number, and I think there's some more that have come in at the last minute. So it's a rather major thing for a lot of people. I will state this, that we're not opposed to affordable housing. We don't have a problem with that. Our problem is where this is located. We don't think the infrastructure.
We're not in church. I don't want any amens out of here because it will be past, we'll be midnight in here.
Do what?
I said, I don't want any amens out of the audience. You just proceed
Okay.
and let Mr.
All right.
McCain proceed unfettered.
Okay. All right. Well, did we get amens?
Well, you were getting some grumbling out there.
Okay. All right.
I don't know. I don't know if it was for or con, but we need to treat this where
right.
first of all, it's being recorded, and Ms. Oakes has to come back after tonight and type the minutes, so I don't need any murmur on the outside. We'll stay here as long as we need to stay, but we're going to maintain decorum.
Okay. Well, if I get out of line, please
Oh, no,
calm me
no,
down.
Mr. McCain, you were not out of line, sir.
Okay, I'll move on. We're dealing with a narrow, open ditch street that's not adequate for increased traffic. I've been back here over 50 years now, and St. Maurice Lane is just like it was when I came back here 50 years ago. There have been no improvements. It's probably been overlaid a couple of times, but it's still narrow, it's still open ditch, and there's still drainage problems. Drainage in that area is already bad, and I think this subdivision would make it worse. And I think typically when you see the term detention ponds used, you're acknowledging that there are drainage problems. The vehicle congestion would be increased, and you've got 3 schools in the immediate area, one right adjacent to it, and then it will run back behind 2 other schools, and we think there would be increased congestion. Potentially, if there's 2 movements per day out of 36 units, there would be probably a minimum of 72 vehicles entering and exiting on the St. Maurice outlet daily. We're concerned about who would do the maintenance and cleaning of this community center that's proposed. Whose responsibility would that be? Furthermore, and I know the gentleman alluded to the fact that his detention ponds were relatively maintenance-free, but I would think that they would occasionally need to be mowed, and whose responsibility would that be? The developer or the city? Another concern we have is public safety, and I have asked our retired fire chief, Denny Boyd, to come here tonight and address that issue because of the one-way in and out. So I'm going to turn, if I may, Mr. Chairman, the podium over to Mr. Boyd at this
Are you,
point.
have you concluded what you want to talk
Pretty
about,
much,
Mr.
yeah.
McCain?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, any questions for Mr. McCain from commission members? All right, hearing none, let's move on to Mr. Boyd.
All right?
Hold on a second, Mr. Boyd, before you go there. Mr. McCain, I was keeping notes, and it seemed like the only question that you had was the responsibility of the detention ponds and the community center.
Correct.
Okay. Like I said, I'm keeping track, and we'll get those answered on the back end. I'm sorry, Mr. Boyd, go ahead. Please identify yourself, tell us where you live in reference to it.
My name is Denny Boyd. I'm one of the past retired fire chiefs here in Natchitoches. And I can tell you, during my tenure as the fire chief, I always opposed any development where there was one way in and one way out. It is not the thing to have from a fire department standpoint. There's too many things that can happen. You can get your trucks trapped in where you can't get out. We have a 107-foot aerial apparatus here in Natchitoches that's approximately 50 feet long. Whenever you look at the turn radius, it's not going to work. St. Maurice Lane is not compatible with fire trucks meeting garbage trucks or school buses or anything like that. The road is too narrow. I can't tell you how many times that we've almost ran fire trucks in the ditch on St. Maurice Lane trying to keep from hitting an opposing vehicle. It just won't work. As far as the drainage, neither the city nor the levee board has done a very good job over the years of keeping all the drainage ditches clean. All you have to do is check on Kaiser Avenue at the drainage ditch that comes across Kaiser, goes through Blanchard subdivision, and you'll see the problems that are there. There's still water standing. The water does not flow out. I don't see anything but problems with the drainage part. From the public safety standpoint, right now, from what I gather, there's quite an out-migration of young firefighters and police officers in Natchitoches. I'm not sure of the level of training that the firefighters have right now. I don't think this is a good time to bring in another development. I don't have that confidence in what's taking place. As I said, one way in and one way out is not a good thing to have, not from a fire department standpoint. And I beg to differ. If the fire department chose to say that that's okay, I'm here to disagree with that.
All right.
I'll entertain any questions that anybody might have.
Commission members, questions for Chief Boyd, retired Chief Boyd?
Mr. Chairman, I
Yes,
just have one. Would you address in a little bit more detail the turning radius? You were talking about one way in and one way out. Well, you've got this big fire truck in there, so somehow you got to get it out. So how does that even happen? Is there a way to turn that truck around at the end of the street?
I don't have the calculation on the turning radius of that particular apparatus. At one point I did, because I was the person that wrote the grant to get the truck. But I'm not sure how big the cul-de-sac is and whether or not it would accommodate the turn radius of the aerial.
The number's 68 on the plat submitted, Chief. Do you recall whether that number is bigger or smaller in your mind?
Okay, I don't recall. I haven't.
Okay.
It's on the plat?
Yes, sir, 68-foot radius.
I don't have that.
That's fair enough, it's just on there, I just thought you might know one way or the other if that was bigger or smaller.
68 is the standard size for a cul-de-sac.
That's what I thought. All right.
The turnaround for a cul-de-sac is 68.
Now, that's the radius.
That's the radius to turn.
Which means the diameter of it is 136 feet.
Once you lay into a place like that, or any place, when you lay your hose with one way in and one way out, you may have all of your apparatus trapped, where if you have another incident somewhere, you can't get it out. It's just not a good idea to have one way in and one way out.
Chief Boyd, don't you usually, in an emergency fire situation, have more than one vehicle at the location at a given time? So it's more than just turning around one fire truck. You have multiple fire trucks and other first responder vehicles on the scene that need to be able to get turned around and pass each other.
That's correct. According to the National Fire Protection Association, on any structure fire, you have to roll with 2 engines and an aerial or a service truck. So you're looking at multiple trucks. If this complex was built, and if there was a fire there would be no less than 2 engines, the 107-foot aerial, a rescue truck, a chief's vehicle, and whatever number of police cars show up. So it is very easy for your trucks to get trapped into an area. Then what happens if you have something on the other side of town and you can't get your apparatus out?
I had a question, Charles.
Sure.
If one of the residents was having a gathering or party or social event at their home, for instance, and there were a number of vehicles that were parked on the side of the road, that would also hinder your fire trucks and your public safety getting in and out of area with just a cul-de-sac for one way in, one way out?
That is correct, depending on whether or not they just park on one side of the street or on both sides. It could be, just like there are in other parts of town where vehicles park on both sides of the street and you can barely get through. These trucks are almost 10 feet wide, so it's very difficult to negotiate a lot of our city streets as it is because they're relatively narrow.
That answered my question.
Thank you.
Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I received a message from Chief John Wynn, and he just wanted to make the comment that he never requested or preferred the one-way in, but according to the radius of the turnaround that was presented, it was in compliance with city subdivision regulations. So he just wanted to clear it up that he never preferred one-way in.
That's fine. I will state for the record that I've been on this board, I don't know, 15, 20 years. And when Chief Boyd was here, he never approved one when there was an alternate, he never approved one with a cul-de-sac.
I could name about 3 of them that I opposed, and none of them were accepted. It's just bad business, and it puts an undue strain on your fire department.
No problem, Chief. Did you have any questions that I need to ask, or yours was basically a statement for the, yeah?
Y'all can ask me any questions.
No,
I don't really have any questions.
I'm keeping track of questions to make sure that the developer answers. And I think you just had a public safety statement. You don't really have any questions, do you?
I'm concerned about the public safety, but I'm also concerned about the drainage, and I just don't think the water has anywhere to go.
I understand. Thank you, Chief. Before we hear from the general audience, I want to go ahead and file into the record, we got a 69-page petition against the Glendale subdivision delivered today, and I think Mr. McCain's 426 is probably a light on it. But what it talks about is opposition for St. Maurice Lane being on a substandard, open narrow ditch street and only one way in and one way out, increasing already poor drainage for the area, increasing vehicle congestion with a minimum of 72 cars entering and exiting onto the substandard street. The community center getting parking, increasing additional flow problems, concern about the perpetual maintenance on the rehabilitation of the community center and detention pond, keeping it free of trash and debris, talking about whether or not the detention ponds pose multiple safety hazards, including drowning, exposure to contaminated water, mosquito-transmitted diseases, increase of snakes and rodents, and that its location near the school. And talks about exposure to contaminated water associated with several common illnesses, gastrointestinal issues, infectious hepatitis, aseptic meningitis, leptospirosis, I guess, intestinal bacteria such as E. coli, salmonella, shigella, hepatitis A, typhoid, and tetanus. We'll file these in the record, and I would hazard a guess that 426 signatures on it is light. But everybody's had a chance to look at that, all the commission members have. There's also a particularized letter from Richard Zell echoing the same concerns, going into a little bit more detail about the drainage issues. There's an email and a letter from Miss Carolyn Breedlove, basically talking about the similar issues about traffic and an extremely dense subdivision, extremely dense subdivision, drastically altering the character of the existing neighborhood, talking about how stupid it was that they paved over Adelaide Street, which was a former bayou, and that we don't need to make the same mistakes that we've made in the past. An email from Miss Dawn Sellis saying she lives on St. Maurice, echoes the comments about the deep ditches and narrow road, the city not keeping up the problem, and also talks about the detention pond, disease, vermin, and dangers to young children as being a serious health concern. Ms. Kate Kaufman, an email from her, talking about the traffic on the substandard street, the fact that there's proximity to 3 schools, increased drainage issues, it's already bad. There are too many houses per acre causing fire houses and overcrowding, and then the detention pond echoing the vermin and health issues as well as drainage issues. Ms. Fran Norsworthy, talking about the lack of traffic control, drainage, and utility problem, talking about there's 3 schools, a rec complex, and a church nearby. Before any subdivision is established, it's necessary to fix the drainage issue and traffic flow. Another, I guess it's just a typed letter. It doesn't show us as an email. Well, it says it's an email, but there's no header on it. From Gail and George Batson, talking about plenty of traffic on St. Maurice, and that it's torn up because of heavy equipment, farm equipment, tractors and trailers, and it's going to triple the traffic on Blanchard Road. Said they were unable to attend because of health concerns. Do we have anything else that we need to put in? Any other opposition? Ms. Rock?
No, sir, not at this point in
Okay.
time.
I'm sorry, I should have taken that before we took up Mr. McCain, but I wanted to make sure all that was in the record. All right, let's hear from anyone else in opposition to the application of Roanoke Development. Please come forward and identify yourself and tell us where you live and Tell us if you've got anything to add, or you just want to echo the comments of McCain and Boyd, and/or Boyd. You don't have to echo both of them. You can pick and choose. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Zach Middendorf, and I will try to not waste time echoing too much. However, just want to say that the issues of child safety, public health, emergency first responder issues, traffic congestion, all those things that have already been mentioned are certainly paramount and of significant concern. But there is another issue that it needs to be addressed that does affect all of us, and that's property values. I'm certainly not opposed to development. As a real estate broker, I welcome the opportunity to help have new homes to help people purchase and eventually sell. So I'm very much pro-development and pro-investment in our community that a new development brings. But any property in any given area, a given street or neighborhood, it is important to the other property owners there and also to the city at large, that maintenance of those properties certainly, but also improvement of those properties. And it's always preferable to have a street or a neighborhood that is on the rise and improving, and property values are improving for that immediate area, which then affects the whole city. While some of the pictures of the homes were fairly attractive, I have no doubt that they will probably do a very nice job of constructing this project. The majority of the lots are 50 foot or 60 foot wide, and while that might meet the requirements, those requirements were put in place a long time ago. There are older home sites that have lots that are that narrow, but it is not preferable. It's not good for property values. It causes too much density. The gentleman spoke about the majority of their target market preferring smaller, more low maintenance. Okay, I'm taking this off. I can't breathe. Woo! Preferring smaller, more low maintenance properties. As a broker, I can say that occasionally I have a client who's looking for that, but it is by no means the preference. The overwhelming majority of our buyers want elbow room, and 50 to 60 feet does not give that to them. That is not considered a positive. That does not help a neighborhood to have more small lots like that. It brings down property values, not only for that immediate neighborhood, but for the whole city. So
All right,
that's kind of the gist of it.
Any questions for Mr. Middendorf? I have a question for you, Mr. Middendorf. 7,200 square feet is what the solemn expression of the legislative will of the city council is of the minimum lot size. The typical lot in here is going to be 8,407 square feet, 1,200 square feet more than the city council has told us. And remember, we're sort of an enforcement body. We're here for public hearing. We're here doing their dirty work, taking these public hearings. I mean, the average lot in here is 9,590 square feet, but I'd say the typical lot is 8,400 square feet.
Okay,
So my question to you is, and I'm just prefacing that, your experience as a broker, what do you think our lot size should be? 7,200 is not sufficient. Evidently, 8,400 is not sufficient. What should it be so we can try to get the city council to change it? I mean, you know what's not good, so tell me what is good.
So the total square footage of the lot is not the issue. It's the road frontage, and as I said, elbow room, the distance between houses. I mean, you could have a 10-foot wide lot that was 9,000 feet long.
Well, of course, you got setbacks, you got a
It's
20.
that's a 90,000 square foot lot too, but
Well, we've
it's
got
not.
we've got a
not good
25,
one.
we've got a 25-foot front setback, is that correct, Ms. Rock?
Yes,
And a 10-foot rear and side,
25 front and rear, 5-yard side.
5 yard on either, that's 25 on the front and back and 5 on each side. So you're gonna have, right there, it's gonna be, that's gonna squeeze it down. So what you're saying is you want fatter lots and not,
Absolutely, 100%. And so does the overwhelming majority of our buyers.
okay?
There are other real estate professionals here, James Bolton, right over there, I think can speak on this issue as well. Janice, come on up.
Hold on a second, no, that's not the way we're gonna do it, Janice. We're gonna finish, no, that's, Janice can, hold on. Janice can talk next. I have no problem with somebody calling somebody else to come up. But I made the church reference earlier. You gotta finish testifying, brother, before we move on to the next one.
I wish I could give you a more precise answer as to what the minimum lot sizes should be. I think the determining minimum lot sizes by square footage is a poor way to go about it.
It's probably all.
Because you can have very, very narrow, long lots that meet the requirements. And if you had 10-foot setbacks on the sides, oh, all right.
And that's
But if it's a really narrow lot, you're just gonna have a shotgun hunt that is no longer considered, to be a preferable style of home.
That's a fair comment, Mr. Middendorf. It's a fair comment. Maybe what, and that's not what we're here for before, but maybe we should have some kind of ratio between the length and the width.
Yeah, and I think that having more width, in addition to being something that buyers prefer or look for, consider valuable, I think it also adds greatly to neighbor relations and just the general neighborhood getting along, everybody feeling good about each other when they're not right on top of each other.
Well, those are fair comments, and I appreciate your input. Did that raise any more questions for Mr. Middendorf from anybody else? I really appreciate your candor and your critical thinking on it.
All right.
Thank you,
Well,
sir.
thank you.
Ms. Bolton?
Hi, my name is Janice Bolton. I'm also a real estate broker here in Natchitoches, have been for 15 years. Can you hear me now? I'm Janice Bolton. I've been a real estate broker here for 15 years. I grew up right about here. I know that pasture from riding horses when I was a little girl. I also own 5 homes within a few blocks of this proposed development. As far as lot size, Mr. Whitehead, I would offer my opinion. I agree with Zach that square footage only is probably not a good way to measure it.
This is probably enacted before you and I were born, Jan.
I know. I've been dealing with it for 15 years, like I said. But perhaps you have, if you're going to do it by square feet, maybe you have a size per square feet for up to so many square feet of the house. And then maybe a larger lot for a larger house. It's when you want to put a big house on anyway, that's another day. I have 2 questions for the developer.
All right, give them to me.
One is, will they ask the city to take on responsibility ownership after the building is completed of the streets and drainage
That happens by law.
automatically?
It happens by law. And when you're talking about the drainage, you're talking about subterranean drainage. You're talking about the surface drainage.
Surface.
That, this will be curb and guttered. So the city's gonna be responsible for what's in the curb and gutter.
Okay.
And then the detention pond, that's, Mr. McCain has already had that down. But that's by operational law. When we sign the final plat and our city inspectors inspect the water and the sewerage and the drainage, and we sign off on that final plat, then the street is ours.
Okay, I just hadn't heard that addressed in any of the comments. I think my apprehension comes from not knowing what the future plans are, whether, you know, a homeowner cares for a property a lot different than a tenant does. And as a landlord, you know, unfortunately, when mine come up, I usually have a family member that wants to live in them, so, but I'm less of a landlord than I used to be, but I am a local landlord. I wasn't curious, how would you spend $8 to $9 million on a project in another state and then not know whether you're gonna keep it or sell it? And if you're gonna keep it,